heading into fantasy drafts, he has a few wide receivers. I have his sleeper options, and guys you could take late in your fantasy draft, and they could break out and eventually be starters for fantasy owners. The first guy, Valdez-Scantling of the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs here obviously lost Tyreek Hill after he wanted more money, and the Chiefs didn't want to pay him, so they shipped him off to the Miami Dolphins. And right now, Valdez-Scantling, he got a decent contract in the offseason here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, not a good year at all. 26 catches, 430 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. But I think this Kansas City Chief team could use him as a deep threat here for Patrick Mahomes. And they really need a number one guy over there, even though we know Kelsey really is their number one target in the passing game. But obviously, he's a tight end, so Valdez-Scantling, he could stretch the field a little bit. Health has been an issue, and inconsistencies have been an issue. But now he's going to a little more of a pass-happy offense here in Kansas City than he was in Green Bay, even though he's played with great two quarterbacks. Going from Rodgers to Mahomes isn't much of a difference, even though we know Mahomes has a bigger arm and they throw the ball more over there in Kansas City. So Valdez-Scantling, to take him in the 13th, 14th round of your fantasy league is your 5th or 6th receiver. I think it's a good bargain deal and a guy who definitely could be a sleeper, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him emerge and have a pretty good year. The next guy, Jaylen Tolbert of the Dallas Cowboys. So right here, the Dallas Cowboys, a lot of injuries on the offense and a lot of moving parts over the last offseason. Right now, it's only CeeDee Lamb and Tobert as the top 2 guys in that receiving core, with Noah Brown as well. But I think Tobert has more upside. He's a rookie this season, and he's going undrafted in a lot of fantasy leagues here. But Michael Gallup, he's probably going to be out for the first few games with the torn ACL from last year. James Washington, who they signed, who was a former Pittsburgh Steeler, broke his foot, and he's probably not going to be ready for the opener as well. So it's next man up over there in Dallas, and Jaylen Tolbert. We'll see what this guy's got. I know he was a late-round pick here, but the Cowboys are saying they're not going to go out there and try to get a veteran wide receiver in a trade or sign a guy like Odell Beckham, even though he wouldn't be ready for the regular season as well. So right here, Tolbert, he's a guy you take a flyer, and maybe he's a guy that breaks out, because this Cowboy offense, we know they look to pass the ball a lot here. And Dak Prescott, he's been an up-and-down quarterback so far throughout his career. But he does get the ball to guys. Cedric Wilson isn't there. Gallup's hurt. James Washington hurt. And Amari Cooper shipped off to Cleveland in the offseason. So right here, Tolbert's the next man up, and maybe he definitely could be a sleeper option. And not many people are thinking about him or talking about him, but I definitely think he could play a role with this Dallas Cowboy team. And we've seen over the last few years, guys emerge out of nowhere in this offense as decent receiving options. The next guy's Rondale Moore of the Arizona Cardinals. So right here, Moore, he had a decent rookie season, 76 rush yards, 54 catches, 435 receiving yards, and a touchdown. But now with DeAndre Hopkins suspended, and I believe out the first 5 or 6 games of the season here, Moore's going to step in and have a bigger role. A.J. Green, yes, he's still there. Zach Ertz, he's going to be a good part of the offense at the tight end position and catching some passes in that offense. But right here, like I mentioned, Christian Kirk in other videos, he's gone to Jacksonville, and Moore's going to take that Kirk spot as a deep threat and a speedy guy who could break some tackles and get open in the open field. So right now, Moore, he's going late in fantasy drafts, undrafted in most leagues as well. And he's another guy that could be a lottery ticket that you pick him, he breaks out on your bench, and then you got a starter right there here for Rondale Moore. So now with Hopkins out, A.J. Green in the latter part of his career, and Christian Kirk in Jacksonville, I think Moore could be a decent option this season, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him break out and be a guy who could be a good starter at the flex position or your number 2 or 3 wide receiver. The next guy's Robert Woods of the Tennessee Titans. So Robert Woods, he was good the last few seasons with the Los Angeles Rams, and then he went down with the ACL injury mid-season last year. So now he's on the Tennessee Titans. They got him for a 5th-round pick in the offseason. And the Titans, a lot of turnover there as well over there for their offense. Julio Jones, they cut after one season with his injuries. And then they traded A.J. Brown, who they didn't want to give a big contract extension to the Philadelphia Eagles. So they drafted Burks, and now you got Robert Woods, and Woods saying he's healthy and he feels back to normal like a few seasons ago. So last year, before he went down for Woods, he was having a decent year. 45 catches, 556 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown as well. So we know Woods is a possession receiver. We know he's an underneath guy who's going to make a lot of catches, and he's not going to go deep. He's just underneath working those 8-10 yard routes is Robert Woods. And I think that works pretty good here with this Tennessee offense. That's going to be a ground and pound type of offense and try to keep the defense off their feet a little bit by stretching the field with a couple short routes and short plays. So I think Tannehill and Woods could work out where Tannehill and Julio Jones didn't work out because he was more of a deep threat, even though Tannehill and A.J. Brown, who runs all the routes and the route tree, worked out great, especially his yards after catch. But Robert Woods, I think, fits well with the Titans. He's a guy a lot of people have forgotten about. And right now, he's going 10th, 11th round in most fantasy drafts. And I think he could be a sleeper option. And if Woods is back to 100%, he's definitely a borderline number 2, definitely number 3 wide receiver flex option for fantasy owners. And his ADP is a perfect time to go out there and get him. And the final wide receiver I have as a sleeper option this year is Russell Gage of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So right now, Russell Gage, he looks like the number 2 guy there. Reports are coming out. Todd Bowles isn't exactly 100% sure if Chris Godwin's going to be ready for the opener. And Russell Gage, he's had some flashes over the last few seasons. Now to go from a decent offense in Atlanta that was inconsistent to one of the top offenses in all the game with Tom Brady and this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team, that's a huge upgrade. 66 catches, 770 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns on 94 targets. So right now he'll be the 2 or 3 wide receiver over there is Russell Gage for this Tampa Bay Buc team. And he's going right now 9th, 10th round in most fantasy leagues. And I definitely would feel comfortable, especially early in the season, him being a flex option for my fantasy team. He could run the routes. He could stretch the field a little bit. And they're not going to have to count on him as much as they did in Atlanta. You got Mike Evans. You got Godwin. You got Leonard Fournette, who can catch the ball out of the field. The tight end, you got Cameron Brate, who's pretty decent as well. Now that he's the number 1 guy with Rob Gronkowski retired. And Russell Gage, he's going to be part of a good offense, and he's going to play that Antonio Brown role like we saw last season before Brown just went AWOL at the stadium versus the New York Jets. But I think Russell Gage could have a good season. He has the number 2, number 3 guy, depending Chris Godwin's help. And he's a guy that can help fantasy owners in many ways, and he did it last season towards the end of the year. And that's why he got the good contract from Tampa Bay. So a guy going 9th, 10th round who could pay big dividends for fantasy owners is definitely a sleeper type of option and a guy I'm willing to go out there and get. So that's a few wide receivers I have as sleeper options entering the season of fantasy drafts within the next few weeks.